Hello, everyone. It's Around the Big Ten. We are getting down to it. It's week 12 of the college football season. Playoff races are getting interesting. Games are getting more and more meaningful for all these teams as they jockey for playoff position, as they jockey for a better bowl game, whatever it might be, bowl eligibility in some cases. So we're going to do this is going to be our week 12 prediction show. I got Chip Minnick here with me, as always. Chip, not maybe the most exciting slate in terms of like marquee, like big picture national games. Indiana's on a bye. Ohio State's a big favorite, but it's going to be interesting to me. There's some toss-up games here that have some implications on bowl eligibility, on just kind of jockeying for position. Some programs who really need a win, some programs, under first-year coaches that kind of can boost their year-one resumes under those coaches. So it's not a total loss of a weekend, in my opinion. I think there's some stuff to watch, especially starting right out of the gate on Friday night. UCLA at Washington. Washington, as we're recording this, is a 4.5-point favorite. Chip, I guess any thoughts on that? Your winner. And if you have, again, Washington's a 4.5-point favorite. I know you're not a huge gambling guy, but is that about right? Is it too high? Is it too low? Kind of how do you see this playing out?
Well, I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, it's not necessarily the most scintillating of college football weekends related to Big Ten games, but you're absolutely correct when you're talking about, we'll talk about Penn State and Oregon here in a little bit. They are, within the college football playoff rankings. These other teams that are kind of, as you said, jockeying for better bowl game destinations or bowl eligibility. I'm going to go with Washington here for the simple reason, prior to us hitting record, I was looking at this, and Washington, say what you will about the fact that they aren't having as good a season as they did last year. And obviously with the coaching change and the loss of such talent off that national championship contending team, Washington's a better, just a different team at home. And by the slimmest of margins, I'm going to give it to Washington. I freely admit, I think that 4.5-point spread sounds about right. Prior to us hitting record, I looked at it and I thought, okay, well, what did they do last year? When they were both members of the Pac-12, they didn't play last year. They haven't played for the last 2 years. So you really don't have really any kind of idea in terms of the barometer of what UCLA is with their new coaching staff. They've been playing better, but I'm going to give it to Washington simply for the fact that they're playing at home.
Yeah, this was one of the more interesting games of the weekend for me in the Big Ten, just because, two first-year head coaches, two coaches who are, one coach trying to keep things going at Washington, another coach trying to kind of elevate UCLA. As you mentioned, they haven't played the last couple of years. They're coming in this game very differently, though. Like, even though the records are very similar, like UCLA is playing much better right now than they were at the beginning of the year. Washington had a clunker last week against Penn State, which kind of goes back to our thing about, these cross-country games have not been good for the team traveling so far in Big Ten play. But I'm with you. I think Washington is going to win. You are right. They are a much better home team. I don't know that UCLA has quite enough firepower. I was impressed with how they ran the ball against Iowa last week, but I think you're going to have a little more juice this week to beat Washington in their place. The spread is interesting. It's one of those spreads that, like, I always say this, like, if games that are like 4.5 on the spread is kind of like, that's generally Vegas saying like, I don't know. Like, usually when you get something like a 2.5 or a 3 in the 3.5 range, or like a 6 or a 7, it's like whatever. But like when you get that 4.5, it's kind of like Vegas, like, who knows? But I agree. I think Will Rogers will make enough plays here, and Washington will win a game somewhere in the, I'll go somewhere in like the 30 to 31, maybe 24 range, like 31-24, maybe something like that. That's kind of how I see this playing out. But I do think Washington snaps UCLA's winning streak. And then again, that would make them bowl eligible and would put UCLA in a situation where they got to win their last 2 to get to 6 wins. So this is an important game for both these teams as they try and get not only get bowl eligible or work toward bowl eligibility, but they also try and jockey for, again, a better bowl game. So good one out there on the West Coast. Saturday afternoon, I think the only noon kick. It is the only noon kick. Ohio State at Northwestern. Game will be played at Wrigley Field. Ohio State, as we record this, is a 28.5-point favorite. Chip, I'm probably not. I can probably guess who you're going to pick to win the game, but just your thoughts on this. This is an interesting game in the sense that Ohio State's going on the road to the Chicago area, playing at a baseball stadium, and with Indiana and Michigan on deck. Is this a letdown spot for Ohio State? Like, do they need to be careful here, or is the talent gap such that you don't think this can be close?
I think that the possibility of a letdown is always there. I will say that maybe it's just me, maybe being the overly optimistic Ohio State fan, that I thought the program I think the coaching staff and the players collectively kind of turned the page, so to speak, after the kind of, let's just say, the lackadaisical effort that they put forth against Nebraska. I think that Penn State game just really kind of brought everyone together in terms of, hey, this is still within our grasp to realize our goals. And I think that they came out and Ryan Day has the team focused and ready to handle games and teams like they did with Purdue. I think they'll have the same thing against Northwestern. Personally, and this is just me, I'm against the whole Wrigley Field. I've been to Wrigley Field. I'm not taking shots at Wrigley Field. I think it's a wonderful place to see a baseball game. I just think Northwestern, this is kind of a cash grab, like the notoriety of, let's play Ohio State in Wrigley Field. I realize they're going to be doing the same thing against Illinois later on this season. But to your point, Mark, I think that Ohio State, they're going to come out focused. I think it's going to be a similar mindset. Hey, let's just take care of business and let's get back to Columbus and focus on our last 2 home games, because getting to the Big Ten championship game is within our grasp.
Yeah, I agree with your point that the Penn State game kind of energized the locker room, energized the roster, the coaching staff there. They did a good job last week avoiding a letdown scenario against a really bad Purdue team. There are some ingredients here that make me think Northwestern's going to cover. Field conditions, Wrigley's, that's been a problem. That's been a big problem. What kind of field conditions are there going to be? Chicago weather. We have all sorts of wind possibilities. You never know what you're going to get. I remember a couple of years ago when Ohio State had CJ Stroud and they played a game in like ridiculous wind conditions, and Ohio State was kind of, not only lucky to escape, but that was an ugly, like, nasty game. And Ohio State obviously didn't cover that week or come close to it. And I see the over-unders like 44.5, which seems really low. And I think a lot of that might be baking in like Northwestern not scoring a whole lot, because Ohio State has, just shut out Purdue, and they're generally against these types of teams. They've done pretty well defensively. But there's something about this game that makes me think like it's going to be one of those Ohio State's going to be really glad to get it over with type of games. And so I obviously I'm picking Ohio State to win, but 28.5 is a lot. I'm thinking maybe something in the 31-7 range, something like that would be about where I've got this right now. I will do my score pick later for those who follow me on Twitter and such, but we'll see. I don't love this spot for Ohio State. I liked it last, like everyone's talking about the Purdue game being the letdown game. I'm like, I don't think so. Going back home, like you're coming off the high of the win, but I think it was a motivating factor. Like, hey, everything's back in play now for Ohio State. This one is like, just get past this so, we can play Indiana and Michigan. But just, again, with the field conditions and the weather conditions, I don't know. I think it's going to be an ugly game. I think it's probably going to be one that makes you want to bleed out of your eyeballs at some points. But I think Ohio State will handle business, but I don't think it's going to be pretty. So we'll see about that. That's on noon on Big Ten Network. 2:30, Fox Sports 1, Michigan State at Illinois. Time of recording, Illinois is a 2.5-point home favorite over the Spartans. Chip, another one of those games we kind of talked about at the beginning of the show, bowl positioning, bowl eligibility, all that good stuff. First-year head coach there at Michigan State, Jonathan Smith. How do you see that one playing out in Champaign?
Well, I'm gonna borrow what you just said, that in terms of the Las Vegas line, the fact that when we were talking previously about Washington, UCLA, that Las Vegas really doesn't know. Okay, if the Las Vegas line for this one is like 2.5, so that should really give any bettors some caution there, because I mean this is truly I know we're going to talk about some other games here, like kind of a pick'em game. In my estimation, I'm going to go with Illinois simply because, I mean, Illinois started out, and I'll freely admit, I didn't anticipate Illinois having as strong of a start to the season as they did. I mean, they were 4-0. Obviously, they had that very impressive win in the historical context against Michigan, and yeah, Michigan, they're down, but still, I mean, that was just great for Bielema and the program. But they've been sputtering. I mean, they're coming off an embarrassing, in my estimation, embarrassing loss to Minnesota. I think Michigan State is definitely a team that is improving, but I think Illinois is better. And like you said, Mark, I think this is a game where Illinois, they've already clinched bowl eligibility. Now it's just a matter of improving their bowl game destination. And as far as Michigan State, with a couple games remaining, Michigan State, a bowl game is still within their grasp to attain. But after this, what I believe is going to be a close loss to Illinois, they have to win those last two games to get to bowl eligibility.
I am going to go the other way on this one. I am going to pick Michigan State as an underdog winner here. Part of what you said is why I don't think Illinois is playing very well right now. I think they have tapered off a bit since their really hot start. They are bowl eligible. Michigan State is not. I think getting to 6 wins would be really important for Michigan State. You get those extra bowl practices. You got this team that you've kind of pieced together through recruiting and transfer portal and a new head coach, and you want to get all these extra practices. You got a young quarterback who you'd love to get those extra practices and get a bowl game. Michigan State's been really hard to get a read on for me this year. I like Jonathan Smith. I liked the hire. I still like the hire. I still think he's going to do pretty well there. But it's just one of those things where I don't know what to expect from them week to week. They've been very up and down in my estimation. But I feel like this is the right spot for them to get maybe not a signature win, but get a win that, gets people's ears perked up a little bit, given that Illinois was ranked not too long ago. I think they're getting Illinois at the right time. And again, I think the motivation of getting to 6 wins, getting to bowl eligibility, give me Michigan State 24, Illinois 20, something like that. I think Michigan State wins a close 1-score game on the road, and will be a nice win for Jonathan Smith. So there's our first disagreement on picks. I don't think we're gonna have a disagreement on this next one, but no. 3:30 on CBS at 3:30 p.m. at CBS. Penn State, number 4 at Purdue. We talked about it on the last show. Purdue just looks like a program that can't wait until the season is over. And I don't know what that's going to mean for Ryan Walters. He probably gets another year. I don't know that Purdue's in the business of like doing a lot with buyouts and things like that at this point. You're going to want to limit that. You probably need to give him another year, but this feels like a program that's lost its way majorly against a Penn State team who surprisingly played very well against Washington last week, just because coming off the tough Ohio State loss, Weren't sure how they bounce back. They dominate Washington. They're number 4 in the rankings. They, like in an amazing spot to make the playoffs. Like, yeah, they may not go to the Big Ten championship game, but that may actually be a good thing for them. They kind of sit there like 11-1 if they win these last few games where they're going to be big favorites. Chip, anyway, this game is close on Saturday.
Okay, I don't know if, and not that I would wish ill on anybody, but like maybe if somebody comes down with, like food poisoning, or if there's some kind, I mean, I'm trying to make light of the situation. I think, in all fairness, I think Penn State, now we talked about it at the beginning of the recording, I think this is public posturing for Penn State, because even though and we agree that, Penn State, they're chasing Ohio State and Oregon for that Big Ten championship game. I think in the back of their mind, they know, all right, more than likely we're not going to get there. So everything that we can do now is icing on the cake, so to speak, in terms of in the estimation of the college football playoff committee, trying to improve themselves. Not that they have to. I mean, like you said, they're ranked number 4, but okay, we want to be hosting a college football playoff game at Beaver Stadium. We want to show, yes, we are worthy of being in the college football playoff. So unfortunately, Purdue is going to be their next victim. I think Purdue, I think they quit. I think they're done. I think that Ryan Walters, he knows, he has to be knowing that going into next year, his seat is going to be probably the hottest within the Big Ten conference. So I don't see how Purdue keeps this close. I think they'll try to pull out any kind of, if they have any kind of trick plays or surprises against Penn State. But I just think Penn State is really playing well. It's, like you said, coming off that difficult loss a couple weeks ago, they banished those issues against Washington, and I think they're playing extremely well.
So with this game, I think I don't know that the line could be high enough. I think Penn State's going to cruise here. I don't see a path to Purdue getting a lot of points. And this is the type of team that Penn State, I think, can dominate. I don't think Penn State's, maybe their one negative on Penn State is the kind of their lack of explosive weapons on the outside. I don't think that comes into play here. I think they'll be able to run the ball. I think they'll be able to get the ball to Tyler Warren. I think even this is a matchup that bodes pretty well for their receivers. And I don't see where the points are going to come for Purdue. So I think Penn State, would I maybe, if I'm betting on this game, 28.5, I hate that's like a number that like, but like, so
right.
maybe I'm betting it down to 28 or 27.5, but like, I think that line's about, I think if I had to bet, I would bet that Penn State's going to cover versus Purdue covering. I think Penn State's going to win big. And to your point, yes, getting a home game is so important for them. They have an inside track on like the 5 seed right now. And maybe that doesn't happen. Like maybe like Ohio State runs the table and beats Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, and now Oregon gets the 5, and so that maybe bumps Penn State to 6. That's possible. But if they went out, they've got a chance to get that 5 spot, and at that 5 spot, I mean, you could be talking about home game against Boise State, followed by neutral site game against like BYU. Like that would be an incredible spot for Penn State to be in. I mean, at that point, you have a very, very good chance of getting all the way to the semifinals. And then it's, who do you draw there? But like, that is a dream scenario if you're Penn State. So they have a lot to play for each week. This is not a team that, again, in the past, maybe there's a letdown here, but with all this jockeying for seeding and everything that's going on now, I think Penn State's in a spot where they roll. So we'll see. 4 p.m. Fox, Nebraska at USC, another game. One team, Nebraska's 5-4, USC's 4-5. So you've got two teams here, very similar in record, very similar in the conference standings, both trying to get bowl eligible. Nebraska's been trying to get bowl eligible for a few weeks now. They haven't been able to do it. Are they going to do it this week at USC?
I don't see it. I'm sorry. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Matt Rule as a coach, and I do believe Nebraska is going to get to bowl eligibility. I just don't see it at USC. I mean, you want to talk about two programs that are both, just kind of, scratching and clawing for respectability. I think USC, I mean, they're kind of, they're struggling in the sense that they benched Miller Moss. They're going to Jaden Maeva at quarterback. They've, like Nebraska, they've had a couple of weeks to kind of, stew and get themselves, to a fever pitch if you can, for this, but like just to kind of regain some kind of sense of respectability. I think with Nebraska, they recognize the fact Dana Holgerson, is now kind of their de facto offensive coordinator. So obviously some things are brewing there in Lincoln. So I'm just gonna give it to USC in the sense that I think they're about a 9-point favorite. Maybe it'll be closer than that. It wouldn't surprise me, especially with the quarterback change. But I'm just going to go with USC being the home team.
I don't think no matter what happens here the next month, I don't think USC can move on from Lincoln Riley. Like, even if they lose the rest of their games, I don't know that they can move on from him. The buyout is such that I just don't know. I mean, I don't know that USC, while they certainly have money, I don't know that they're going to have the stomach for that. Especially in the NIL era, because buyouts are taking on a whole new meaning now, because there's revenue sharing coming, there's extra scholarships coming, there's NIL revenue that, yes, right now that's not coming directly from the school, but where it is coming from a lot of times is from the same people, the same pool of people who would be pooling their money together to pay a buyout. So you may have big boosters who are like, well, I can either help you with the buyout or I can help you with NIL, but I'm not doing both. It's like, buyouts are becoming harder and harder to stomach for college athletic departments across the country. That said, I think he has to win this game. Like, I think his seat becomes so hot if they lose at home to Nebraska and they go to 4-6. I think his seat becomes so hot that either there are some discussions about, do we actually have to do this, or to the very least, he goes into next year where he's kind of a dead man walking, where it's like, yeah, you better make the playoff, or like, we're moving on, because last year was so bad. The only reason we kept you was because of the buyout. Like, I think he has to win this game, and just the perception of his program.
Let's not forget that something else is that we talked earlier about UCLA, and on the previous show talked about how UCLA, they're kind of, now granted, we both picked Washington to win this. That being said, UCLA playing better. They've got the momentum on the recruiting side in terms of Los Angeles, Deshaun Foster, and kind of cycling back to the whole USC thing. Okay, that game is looming for both programs, USC and UCLA, but USC also has Notre Dame. So it's like, okay, I mean, they've got to get to bowl eligibility somehow, and it's not going to be easy. And I just think, like you said, I just believe that both programs want to get to that bowl game eligibility, but I think USC needs it even more so than Nebraska.
Like, Matt Rule's going to be fine if they lose this game. Like, people aren't going to be happy that they're still not bowl eligible yet, and they're, it's a losing streak. I get it, but like, he's still in the kind of that grace period of like trying to rebuild a program. Lincoln Riley has to win this game. They're not going to beat Notre Dame. So like, you lose this game, your best case scenario is 5-7. This is your third year now. Like, if you would have told anyone Lincoln Riley would be 5-7 his third year at USC, everyone's like, oh, he's toast. Like, there's just no way that that's going to be acceptable with what they're paying him. So they have to. And now, like I said, you've benched your quarterback, who, he's not Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, but like, his numbers are pretty good. Miller Moss's numbers, pretty good. He's, 18 touchdowns, 9 picks, 2,500 yards. Like, he's not killing you.
Right.
So if you've made the change, everyone assumes he's transferring now at some point, this offseason. What if you go out there and lose this game, and then the quarterback you replaced him with plays worse? Now it's like, do you even know what your own roster is? Like, do you even have a handle on your own roster? Like, there are so many issues here if they lose this game. I think he has to win this game. I think they will, but gosh, he has to win. So that's, to me, is actually maybe one of the more fascinating games this weekend. Then we have an exact replica of that at 6 p.m. on Fox Sports 1. Rutgers at Maryland, 5-4 team at a 4-5 team, bowl eligibility, everything we're talking about here. Maryland 5.5-point favorite at time of recording. Chip, Rutgers big win over Minnesota last week, snaps a losing streak. Most people didn't think they were going to win that game. Do they carry that over here with a win against Maryland, who's really hit the wall here?
I'm going to go with Maryland because it's at home. Kind of what I said in a similar fashion about Washington. I think Maryland just plays better at home, and I know that Maryland is coming off of they were decisively beaten by Oregon. Now, granted, they played somewhat well, for a limited time. But that's kind of where my rationale is. I mean, I'm going to just kind of plead ignorance here. Is Kyle Monangai out? Because that to me would be like what would sway me back to picking Rutgers. If Monangai is playing, then I could see them being able to do it because Rutgers hadn't been playing well. So it's like, that's kind of where it's like, I was the only reason I'm going with Maryland is simply because of the fact that it's at home. But if Monangai were to be able to play, then I'd give it the slight edge to Rutgers.
Yeah, that's going to be kind of the interesting part. Is my understanding is that he's not been ruled out, but it's not like a guarantee he's going to play. So that's going to be a big thing later in the week as we record this on Wednesday evening. That's going to be a big thing later in the week for me. If he plays, obviously that increases their chances, I think, substantially. But Rutgers again had kind of really hit the wall until that win against Minnesota. I mean, they lose by 22 at USC. Did play USC tough. Lost at home by 35 to Wisconsin. Lost at Nebraska. Maryland was a little feisty. They showed a little bit of fight against Oregon last week. Right. I'll go Maryland. I'll go with the home team on this one. Not a very long road trip for Rutgers, but I just given the uncertainty with the injury situation, Maryland at home. Maryland again gave Oregon a nice little game last week, or a fight. Didn't hand it to them anyway. I will go Maryland in a close, ugly game. That'll be one of those ugly games that like everyone's like, I can't take my eyes off of it, but it's not fun. Like it's so bad, but I can't take my eyes off of it. Yes. Who's going to win? Who's going to fumble it away or something? Special teams, blocked kick, pick six, something stupid's going to decide that game. All right, so we're getting into our nightcap. This one's a little interesting to me just because of the direction of the two programs right now. 7:30 NBC, Oregon, Wisconsin. Oregon currently a 14-point favorite in Madison. Chip, does Oregon fall victim to the kind of cross-country flight? Or does Oregon dish Luke Fickell in Wisconsin yet another loss that's going to make us all question whether this is actually going to work there?
I'm going to go with the latter. And I like Luke Fickell. I mean, I respect, remember when he played, I obviously like how he managed Ohio State in 2011. He was a loyal assistant to Urban Meyer. Liked what he did at UC. For the life of me, I just cannot comprehend why he junked what was working offensively for, I'll just say it, for 30 some years to go to an offensive philosophy and attack that is clearly not working. And I can't recall the show or the media thing, but earlier this week, Barry Alvarez basically, he said something along the lines, he doesn't know what Wisconsin's identity is. And to me, that is not, I realize Barry Alvarez is no longer the athletic director there, but he's still, he's a legend. He's still widely respected. And so Wisconsin, I don't see it. I know that we talk about, because it is a real thing about the cross-country travel and that having an impact. And yeah, I think Wisconsin, they're going to put up a good fight, but I see Oregon covering this spread. I think defensively, they'll be able to shut down anything that Wisconsin tries to do. And I think Oregon's on a mission and they're focused. So I think Oregon will cover this spread. I know they're a two touchdown favorite. I think Oregon will have no problem with Wisconsin.
That's where I'm at. I've got Oregon and covering. I think I just think they're really good. I think Oregon's really good. I think Wisconsin's kind of a mess. You mentioned the identity thing and just going away from what Wisconsin's done so well the last 30 years. That was very easy to predict. When he basically came in and was like brought in like an air raid guy at coordinator, it was very easy to predict this would happen. Even if that's where you ultimately want to arrive, if you ultimately want to move the offense in that direction, you have to do it gradually. You have to understand, like, you can't go to like Navy and put in the air raid. Like, you have to like gradually like take some overlapping concepts and put them together and then slowly wait until you get all of your guys in place over like a 3 or 4 year window in recruiting. And the transfer portal can help you turbocharge that a little bit. But like the idea that you just don't use Braylon Allen, for example, who now looks like a freaking stud in the NFL, like that was so mismanaged. And it feels like Wisconsin kind of lost its way here.
Sure.
And Luke Fickell even has lost his way a little bit. I was a little skeptical when he left Cincinnati. I didn't like this jump. The book had always been, well, he'll leave for Notre Dame, Ohio State, or Penn State, which I thought were all very reasonable. Wisconsin, little different. Is it the right fit? It doesn't look that way right now. I really like Luke Fickell as well. I covered him for many years. I think he's one of the good people in the coaching business. There's a lot of people who are full of in coaching. I don't think I think Luke Fickell is one of the more honest, good people in coaching. This doesn't look like it's working though.
No.
And so I don't know. Boy, would this, it'd be a huge win for them. This would be,
it'd be
his signature win.
It would be phenomenal. Wisconsin was playing Penn State tough a few weeks ago. But I completely agree. I think the implementation of whatever it is that they're trying to do, like you said, like an air raid offense, it's just not working in the sense of, all right, those linemen, they're just not geared for what they want to do offensively. And like you said, the mismanagement of Braylon Allen from a year ago, the quarterback position, I was never, and not that I would want anything bad to happen, but they had the injury to Van Dyke, and so now they're playing lock, and he's just not. It's just not. Everything is not coming together. So I just think it's going to be a really difficult offseason for Luke Fickell.
They had some disasters in the portal at quarterback, Mordecai, Van Dyke. And even moving forward, like at Wisconsin, yes, they've always been able to like maybe get a couple kids out of Ohio, a couple kids maybe out of Florida over the years. They've had to recruit some skill nationally, but they get a lot of those Midwest linemen and a lot of even like in-state, like Wisconsin and Minnesota and like those types of states for their offensive linemen. And those generally aren't like your agile, like, we're going to throw it 50 times. Like these guys are coming from like power offense. They're big. They want to run block. Like, I don't even know that you can make it work long-term if you want to continue to get all these offensive linemen from the current pool of linemen you're picking from, or if you're going to have to go a different direction with where you recruit your offensive linemen, which seems counterintuitive for the head coach of Wisconsin to do. It's like they have so few built-in recruiting advantages, but one of them is like, yes, we can stay in our relatively small area around our campus and get a couple offensive linemen every year because we get a bunch of tough, mean kids. Like, I don't know. I think he's got to reinvent this again this offseason. Like, you can't do it now, but like he's got to really take some hard looks at their offense and what they're doing and their philosophies. I think they're missing Jim Leonard.
Oh yeah, on
defense. Like, and I don't think he had to do that. I think there was a way that would have worked, but they're not in a good place right now. If anything, the line seems low to me, which is like the only reason I'm like, does Vegas know something? Is Oregon going to be victim of the cross-country travel thing? Because if you told me like just in a vacuum, like Oregon, Wisconsin, I'm thinking, oh gosh, 20, 25. points.
Oh yeah.
Like it's 14. It's like, maybe Vegas knows something we don't. So that'll be interesting. Madison at night's always awesome. A great environment. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Oregon wins and covers. So we'll see. That's the slate for this week. We'll do this every week moving forward, especially hopefully through the playoffs. Big Ten right now in great spot, as we talked about the other night, to get 4 teams in the playoffs. So could be a lot of Big Ten football to be played all the way into January. So that's our prediction episode. We appreciate you watching and listening. Thanks again, Chip, for joining me here, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thank you.